Peg.
Marguerite Renuart, Thomas Andre.
Yes.
As I was preparing this, I realized you're originally from Florida.
Yes, born and raised.
Born and raised, and you spent most of your ministerial years in
57 years in Florida.
In Florida.
Right.
Wow, that's interesting. Where did you grow up in Florida? Whereabouts was that in your schooling and your
Coral
family?
Gables, Florida.
Right, okay.
And I went to St. Teresa's School, which happened to be about a block and a half from my house for 12, well, kindergarten through 12th grade. So that was my elementary school and high school education. Then I went to Barrie University for 2 years.
So that's where you met the Adrian Dominicans.
That's where I met the Adrian Dominicans.
So before that, I know we were not at that school.
No, it was the Sisters of St. Joseph from St. Augustine, Florida.
Right, okay. Mm-hmm.
And they had asked me to be a sister since 4th grade. And I kept saying, no, that's not for me, it's not for me. But when I went to Barrie, it was a whole different story because Sister Thomas Mary said, I'd like to invite you to be a Dominican sister. And I couldn't say no, and I was just flabbergasted.
I hope the formation people are listening to that sentence.
And so then I went to see the chaplain of the college, and he knew my family from way back. And so he said, you know, a no is a good sign of a vocation.
Really?
So go home and ask your parents. And my mom's answer when I told her I'd like to be a sister was, you'll have to wear shoes, because I always went barefooted in the house, and she was always on my back. She says, you know, nuns wear shoes. And then my dad, when I asked him, he said, it's your life. You can do anything you want with it. So that was the end of the discussion with the family, but it was...
You know, when I hear stories like that, we are blessed. Mine was about the same thing. And the fact that our parents supported our decision.
Yes.
Because there were a lot of our women who they were not supported at the, you know, once they were there and in there for a while. But so what a blessing it is to have had parents like that. What about your siblings?
I have an older sister who is deceased, and then I was second in the family. I have a brother and then 2 other sisters.
Oh.
So there were 5 of us altogether.
And where are they at now?
Well, my brother lives in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and my sister lives in Toledo, Ohio. And my youngest sister lives in Jacksonville, Florida. So she's the only one left in Florida now.
You just recently came to campus.
Right.
How was that for you? How was the decision to do that?
Well, it was a decision made basically on my medical situation, I guess, and my age, and the fact that I had been living for 17 years alone in Pensacola. And it just seemed, from Sister Pat Sieben down to Sister Barrie Caulfield, that it was the right thing to do. So, and I just decided, well, I really don't want to leave my ministry, but if they're saying it's the right thing to do, I think that the phrase that got the most attention for me was, "Come up while you can still get to know the sisters that are here," and that was awesome. And to walk in to have a couple hundred sisters that I did not know, you know, and I've only been here for 2 months, so I'm trying to match faces with names and things like that. But
well, you seem very comfortable. I see you're also involved in work up here already.
Right. Yes.
And what are you doing?
I'm working in the archives. I volunteer in the afternoons on Monday through Thursday, working with Beverly and Lisa. It's great. That's fun. I like that.
I hope you have shortened hours.
1 to 3:30, which I enjoy very much. I really like the archives.
So what were, as you look back on your time in Florida, or even the decision to come up here for formation, you know, that was a big jump for you as well.
Oh, yes.
Because living in Florida, right, and then coming up to Adrian, Michigan.
Well, the funny thing was that I never thought about, you know, how far away from home I'd be or anything like that. I was just going to the convent.
Did you come up here ahead of time?
No,
Did you come up?
No. My family, my mom and dad celebrated their 25th anniversary in Coral Gables, and the next day we got in the car, my brother and my 2 younger sisters, and we drove up to Michigan.
Oh, really?
And it was beautiful because when we got here, all the Barrie sisters that were around were on the driveway at Madden Hall to greet us. There were 5 of us that entered that year from Barrie. And so we were all gathered. They had a big circle of sisters on the grass, and Mother Gerald was there, and she got to meet my mom and dad. And my oldest sister had been living in Alaska for 3 years after her marriage, and had become pregnant, so she was being moved to the United States with her husband. So instead of going directly to their new destination, they stopped here in Adrian. So the whole family was together at a little motel in town. And my little sister, the one in Jacksonville now, was only 5 years old. And I raised her practically because she's the fifth child, and I loved little girls, and I used to dress her and, you know, braid her hair and all that. Well, she was sitting on the balcony in front of Madden Hall, and she was crying. And so Mother Gerald saw her, and she went up to her and she says, "Why are you crying?" She says, "You're taking my baggie." And she had a little purse on her arm. Mother Gerald said, "No, I'm not taking your baggie. I'm not taking your bag." And she says, "That's my baggie." And she pointed to me because she couldn't say Marguerite and she couldn't say Maggie, so she ended up calling me Baggie. So my dad saw this whole commotion going on, and he came up and saved Mother Gerald from more of an explanation.
Oh, isn't that sweet?
That was really sweet. And so when it was time to come up this time, she said, "It's my responsibility to take you back to your mother house and drop you off where I left you 66 years ago." So that was fun.
That was
a little story.
So who were the 5 from Barrie that you entered with?
Alma Christa, Magdalene Ezo, Maria Riley.
Okay.
I was there, and Yolanda Roy.
Right,
and myself.
Yolanda, right.
So that was very nice. So it was nice to see Maggie again, Magdalena. You know, when she came from Japan, the Barrie sisters had asked me to meet her at the airport with my parents. So we took her to our home. She spent the night in my home, her first night in an American home. And she was so precious because she kept bowing to my mother and my father. Every time they spoke, she would bow because that's the way they do it, you know. Right. So she was fascinated by the bathroom and, you know, by the shower and getting into a bed. I don't know what she had, and I knew nothing about Japan. So the next morning we drove to Barrie ourselves together to enter Barrie.
So then you made profession.
Made profession.
And then you most likely were sent out at some point.
I went to St. Alphonsus in Dearborn, Michigan, and I was there from first to final profession.
Okay. 5
years or 6 years, whatever. And then, right after final profession, Mother Gerald called us, a group of us, into the office, and we all knelt before her desk, in front of her desk, and she passed out our little cards to us. And I was the last one to get my card, and she had each sister open their card and say where they were going. So I opened my envelope and I said, "Nassau, Bahamas." And I said, "Mother, do they speak English there?" And she said, "My dear, they speak the Queen's English there." So that was the end of that.
So why was it just the 5 of you, or a few of you?
Well, we were the final profession class, and we were being reassigned. We did not go back to our mission.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So we were being reassigned. So there was a little story with that too, because Sister Benedicta Marie gave me a little envelope as we were leaving the office, and she said, "You're going to all be taking the train," because I think there was an airplane strike or something. It was.
We always took the train to Florida.
1952.
Yeah.
So she gave me a little envelope. She says, "There's money in here for you to buy lunch, you know, buy food on the train." And so we got on the train, and first time was a meal time, and I opened the little envelope. It was a $20 bill, and there were 5 of us. So we bought 2 apples and cut them, and each ate a little bit of an apple for lunch. And then when it came time for supper, I mean, we were sitting choir to choir in the train, yeah. So these gentlemen across the aisle bought us sandwiches, and so we had a sandwich for supper. And I don't know how long, I can't remember how long we were on the train, but we were met in Jacksonville by the sisters there and greeted, all brought into their convent, and the first thing they wanted to do is, "Oh, we'll take your clothes and we'll wash your habits so you'll be all fresh and ready to go on down from Jacksonville to Miami." So they took care of us that night and fed us and got back on the train. And we were dropping people off in all different places. So it's like the milk train, you know?
Right.
When we got to Miami, my parents had been told that they could meet me at the train station.
So you got an extra visit in when that was not common.
Went to Barrie, spent the night at Barrie, so that was nice. And the next morning, they took us to the airport. Sister Avila Shirley Smith. She stayed at Barrie too. We were the 2 going to Nassau. And so they picked us up and took us to the Fort Lauderdale airport, which was just a Quonset hut in those days, you know, and the little propeller planes and everything, and off we went to Nassau.
And now you were in Nassau for how long?
3 years.
And what exactly did happen there? Was your ministry? Was it school?
Yes, we were the Sister Raymond Elizabeth also, and Sister Shirley. She's now Shirley Smith, she was Avila,
Right.
and myself were delegated to take over the elementary school, St. Thomas More, which was across the path, you might say, from Aquinas High School. And that elementary school was being taken over by the Dominicans because the Sisters of Charity who had been there were going to work in the high school. They were shifting. And so the elementary school now is going to be like the feeder school for Aquinas High School. So Sister Raymond Elizabeth had first grade, and Sister Avila had third grade, and the Bishop Turner was the pastor there. And he said, well, sister, you just wait a few minutes and I'll get students for you. And in those days, it was under British rule, and we went up to grade 6, and you took this final exam in grade 6, and if you did not pass the exam, your education was ended. Really? And so he had all these potential 7th and 8th graders, you might say, who had no school, and they couldn't go to Aquinas because they were too young. So he had decided, or I don't know, whoever, the powers that be had decided that they would teach the 7th and 8th graders enough so they could get into the high school. So he rang a bell, and all these children came out of the woodwork, and they sat in the church pews. When he got a church pew full of children, he'd have them carry the bench. They were all portable benches, you know, just wooden benches. Carry them up the stairs and put them in this room that had been designated as my classroom. And so they kept bringing these. It ended up, I had 59 7th and 8th graders.
Now, all of those children were
all
ones that did not pass the test?
Exactly. And they were all, you know, little Bahamian children. And
how wonderful.
Girls and boys alike. And my classroom had a little piece of green wall, a painting on the wall, green, about the size of these lamps. And that was my blackboard. And when I had 3 books on the desk: a British history book, a British literature book, and a British physiology and anatomy book. That was it. The children all had their black marble tablets, you know, the notebooks, those with black marble.
I know what you mean, the composition books.
Composition book and a pencil. So I looked at them and they looked at me, and I said, well, somebody's going to have to help me. And they laughed because they love my American accent.
Oh, right. And you like their accent.
They all speak British English beautiful. So I said, well, how do we teach you? And he said, well, sister, you just, first of all, you pick a book. So I picked the anatomy book because I was a biology chemistry major. And I opened it to the skeleton system. I thought, well, the skeleton, you know, they'll be interested in their bones and all that. So now read us the first sentence. So I read the first sentence.
So this kid is telling me
how to teach. So then he says, now write it on the board. So I have pretty good penmanship, but there was no chalk. And I said, oh, he says, oh, wait a minute. And he sent somebody downstairs and brought me little rocks, the limestone rocks. And I wrote on this piece of green painted wood the first sentence. And they all opened their notebooks and they copied it down. And I waited, and then they said, now, we're going to read you the sentence from our copybooks. So they read their sentence, and they did a beautiful job. They all read the right words. And then they told me to erase the board. Well, I said, oh, where's the eraser? Oh, one little guy brings out a piece of cloth. I don't know where he got it. Here, and he erases the board with a piece of rag. So then they...
Now, this is the late 50s, isn't it?
52.
52?
No, 59.
59, yeah.
So then they all stand up in unison and recite the sentence without looking in their copybook. And so then I realized they learn by rote, you know. So we sat back down and I said, now, tell me, what did you learn in that sentence? Because you know, oh, we don't have to know we don't think about it, we just read it to you. You know, they didn't even know how to think through something. So that was the beginning. That was the first 5 minutes of class. So we proceeded, but it turned out they all wanted to learn American mathematics. and they call it Mats. They wanted to learn American Mats. So I said, well, we'll make a promise. If you teach me British math, I'll teach you American math, because I knew I was supposed to teach the British system. So, but I didn't know a thing about pounds, shillings, and pence.
Isn't it amazing what we were sent out to do, and how it happened, and your own creativity with asking the kids?
So that whole year was kind of interesting. The following year, I was made principal of the school. So, because Sister, Jean Patricia had the high school, and the superintendent of schools was in St. Augustine Institute, had a big high school, and there was one of the priests was the superintendent of schools, and he told Sister Jean Patricia that I should be the principal, because it was managing 2 schools was too hard, for her to be present in both schools.
So how long were you in Nassau?
3 years.
3 years.
So for the next 2 years, I was the principal.
And can you think of one specific time there that was, that story is very outstanding, but a person or a kid or a student or parents that...
Well, what was very inspiring is that the school was made up of all different cultures and socioeconomic. We had a limousine would bring the children from the embassy, and then we had little black children who came from the neighborhood who had one outfit of clothes for the 2 boys. So one would come with pants and one would come with the shirt. And they'd come into my office and say, "Sister, I need pants today," or "Sister, I need a shirt today." And I would have a bag of clothes, thank God, for Sister, Catherine? She's Kathy now, but I can't remember her first. Anyway, she was the principal at Fort Lauderdale. No, Hollywood. And she would send
Catherine Deutsch.
Catherine Deutsch. She would send us boxes of clothes and books and pencils and half-used notebooks that she was our godsend. So I would have pants or shirts to give out to the little kids. And they never wore their shoes to school, but when they got inside the school building, the yard, they would put on their little sneakers or something like that. The poor, poor, poor. And then the rich, rich, rich. So, and I used to say they were vanilla.
And they got along?
Oh, beautifully. Vanilla, chocolate, and caramel colors. And they would play together, and there was no indication of I'm much better than you or something like that.
So you were there for, what did you say, 3 years?
Right.
And you did accomplished a significant amount.
We had a lot
so
of
how
fun.
was it when you were changed?
Well,
because that was not your choice.
No, we could only stay in the Bahamas 3 years in those days, or lose our citizenship, because it was still British rule or something like that. I'm not sure. But anyway, I went to Barrie. Mother Gerald had me moved to Barrie because I was missing 2 courses to finish my bachelor's degree. And she said, "You must be in the bunny group because it's taken you so long to get your degree." So I went back to Barrie, and the 2 courses that were supposed to be the ones I needed, neither one was being taught at Barrie that summer. So I got tutored in the 2 courses. And at the end of the summer, I got my Siena Heights degree on the Barrie College stage. It was quite interesting, but my family got to come, and
that's
it was
nice.
fun. Yeah,
that's nice.
So that was.
So then, where were you?
From
not every mission, but can you think of another one that was had an impact on you, or?
Well, from the Bahamas, I went to Aiken, South Carolina.
Okay.
And I was there 3 years too, with 1 year in between. 2 years, and then went away for a year and came back for the 3rd year. That was when they were changing over from the atomic energy plant to atoms for peace. And all these people were coming from the New England states, and all their Catholic children were flocking into the Catholic school there, and they needed a science teacher. So I went from Bahamas to Aiken, and I was a science teacher for the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade for 2 years. Then Sister Ann Catherine moved me back to Fort Pierce, and I became the principal of St. Anastasia School for a year. And then I went back to Aiken, South Carolina for science, because the people wanted me back because their children were still there. They were going to be there 3 years, so I went back to Aiken. And then from there, I went down to Melbourne, I think, and Melbourne I went to Fort.
But can you think of one other?
Well, I was in Tallahassee for 10 years, and in 1975 it became the Pensacola-Tallahassee Diocese.
Okay. Okay.
When I was in Fort Walton, we belonged to the Mobile Diocese. Then we belonged to the St. Augustine Diocese. And finally, we became our own Pensacola-Tallahassee Diocese.
Mm-hmm.
And
So you were up there by yourself, although there was
there
a
was
group.
one Sister Jean Briggs was working with the senior citizens, but we had like 8 or 10, 12 FSU students, sisters who went to school at FSU, and we had the Terrell House sisters also in the convent. So we had great discussions at dinner time about university life or about Terrell House and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was the only one in the school,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was interesting.
Yes. So what were you engaged in prior to making your decision to come here?
Oh, I was in adult faith formation. That was, I think, my best ministry
Okay.
experience. I was there.
What made it the best?
Well, after being a principal for 39 years and teaching for about 14 years and everything, I loved all that, and don't get me wrong. But I went to this parish. I had been a superintendent of schools to associate superintendent of schools for 5 years. And the rector of the cathedral had this dream that he wanted Bible study for his parish. And they had cut back on all associate superintendents, all associates in all the departments in the diocese, because that was in 208 when the crunch came, you know.
Right, financial.
So 21 of us were dismissed from the pastoral center. And so he called me the next day and he said, would you like to come over and visit with me? And I said, sure, I'll come over and visit with you.
Now, who is this again?
This is Monsignor Michael Reed. He was the rector of the cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
He brings me into his little office and he says, I've had a dream. I want to start a Bible study class. Would you like to do that? And I said, I've never done anything like that. He says, you can do it. He says, it's just like running a school.
Look what else you did in your lifetime.
Yeah, just like running a school. So I took the program, and it was phenomenal because they had leadership directions and training the facilitators, and you know, everything was right there. So we started the program. I said, well, how many books shall I order? He says, order 50. So 3 days later, the 50 books were already sold. People were just flocking to take this course. We ended up with 350 people took the Bible study course. It was the 17 narratives of the Bible called the Great Bible Timeline. So 350 people, which meant we had to have 18 groups and facilitators for all these groups, because Monsignor and I could only do so many facilitations a day. And we offered it 5 times a week, on Monday and Wednesday night, Tuesday and Thursday morning, and Sunday between the classes. And so we had all
the
these
masses?
masses, yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, so that was phenomenal. That was the start of it. And
then from that faith formation group,
doing that
you could get leadership from them to carry that
yeah,
on. Yeah,
and I did that for 10 years.
Oh my.
He was there only for the first 5 years, and he moved on. So that's been and so I missed that very, very much because I was facilitating 5 times a week, and I worked till the week before I came here, so it's kind of a...
You know, you could go down to St. Mary's, I bet, or St. Joseph's and get involved in that.
Yeah, but it would be different, you know, at this point. Yeah. So here I am in Adrian.
Well, we're delighted to have you. What gives you energy and passion at this time of your life? I know the adjustment here, you certainly seem to have adjusted well and quickly.
Well, it's I don't know enough of the sisters yet, but I hope that'll come along. They tell me it takes about a year, so I've only been here 2 months.
And you've been in Florida for so long, so that's another reason why you're...
Right, I don't know anybody.
So this is your entree into knowing more people.
Right, especially the older sisters, but all the younger ones too. I mean, you know, my crowd and things like that. My greatest passion is the beauty of morning. I can get up and have quiet in the apartment and say my prayers and meditate, and I love praying, love reading spiritual books, and I feel very close to Jesus here. And then going to Mass, I absolutely love the Masses at St. Catherine's Chapel. And then it's lunchtime, and then I run off to the archives for 3.5 hours and come back and go to Vespers. And it's just it's a very comfortable rhythm. I hope I'm productive enough to, you know.
You mentioned, you know, you like your spiritual reading. Is there a book that is special to you or that you would...
Well, I love this one book that's called The Dialogue with Your Savior and with Jesus. And it was written by the Eastern monks, and it was translated by the Western monks. And it's just a very it's conversation with Jesus, and it's really beautiful. And that's one, I guess, my favorite. And then That Man Is You by Everly. I love that one too. I read that often. And I pick up all kinds of spiritual books and, from different people, different Jesuits, and all kinds of different, there's so many now. Some appeal to me more than others, but I have a nice collection, and I rotate through them.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh my. Well, the discernment process to come here was very interesting because it started with Sister Marianne Caulfield asking me to discern, and I didn't know, I said, what? Oh, I don't know.
Yep, I hear you.
But Monsignor Reed became my spiritual director, and we talked about it a lot, and he said, well, you'll know when it's time, and I kept saying, I don't want to go, but I guess like everybody else, if you put it in the hands of God, He all of a sudden makes it possible. And the funny thing too, there was a little, before I left, we have a new bishop, Bishop William Walk. He's 50 years old. He's a Holy Cross priest, was a Holy Cross priest. Now he's the bishop of our diocese. And we had just had ordination, and he came into the hall, and I was with the other people. We were kind of cleaning up after the reception. And he said, I'm hungry. And I said, oh, Bishop, all the food is gone, but we have chocolate chip cookies. He says, oh, that'll be good. He says, I hear you might be going. He says, you can't go. And he turns around to the people that were cleaning up and says, 10 more years. Let's chant for Sister. 10 more years, 10 more years. And I said, Bishop, I can't stay 10 more years. I'm 85 years old. And he gets down on his knee and he holds my hands and he says, God bless you.
Will you please act your age?
He was, and everybody, of course, was cheering, and every cell phone that was in the building flashed with the pictures.
That's
so
nice.
That was a very special moment. And then they had a beautiful reception, a luncheon that the current rector wanted to have with all the fancy tablecloths and napkins and crystal and the whole 9 yards, and it was beautiful. And the bishop was there. He came with 2 of the other monsignors and several other priests, and he walked around, and afterwards he said, Sister, everybody's talking about Bible study. Everybody's talking about Scripture. He said, I can't believe it. This is wonderful. And I said, oh, Bishop, I hope it continues even if I leave, and he said, well, we'll do our best, but...
Well, that will lead into the final question here. Briefly, how would you like to be remembered?
I have no clue.
Well, I'll leave that
to the other people.
But you have enjoyed up to this point. What God has.
The Dominican vocation is a beautiful vocation, and I did say that to the people as I was leaving. I said, I think you Bible study people have helped me to actually fulfill my Dominican vocation to be a preacher.
Right.
And I said, to preach the good news, and that was my final goodbye to them. And I keep reminding myself,
That's good.
So.
Well, Marguerite, this has been most enjoyable. And as I said, most sincerely, this certainly is an entree for those of us here on the campus that might not know you that much. I've known you from Florida. Not known you, but...
knew who I was.
Yeah, I knew who you were, but I guess I didn't realize you were actually born there. So thank you, and thank you for making the decision to come to Adrian. That's another way you have preached to people that have not been here for years and years. And you are certainly a gift, and I know they enjoy you in the office, the history office.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful place. I mean, we are so well cared for, and everything is lovely.
But still,
still,
it is a hard decision and transition.
It is.
So be gentle with yourself.
You miss the people that you leave behind. Yeah.
You can always go back, but when we go back,
it's not the same.
It's not the same. But anyway, thank you for being amongst us here on campus.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for all your questions, and I hope I didn't bore you too much with my answers.
No.